A poor black girl helped a millionaire. Then his whisper changed her life forever. Blood trickled from the man's temple, sliding past the edge of his silver hair and pooling beneath his jaw as he lay motionless on the cold sidewalk. His designer blazer was torn, his left shoe missing, and his breathing so shallow it was barely visible. New Yorkers passed by without a glance, just another homeless man, they assumed, another shadow in the South Bronx. But Talia Monroe stopped. She stood frozen for a beat, her textbooks pressed to her chest, her tired feet aching from the double shift she'd just finished at Mel's diner. Her apron was still tied around her waist, and a smear of pancake batter clung stubbornly to her sleeve. She looked down at the man and blinked. Not because she recognized him, but because of the look in his eyes, half open, glassy, and still burning with urgency. "Sir," she said, kneeling, "can you hear me?" The man coughed, a painful rasp, and then, with every bit of strength he had left, gripped her wrist. Talia flinched. His hand was ice. "Don't trust anyone," he whispered, his voice a harsh breath against her skin. "Not even me." "What?" she whispered back, stunned. "Sir, you need help." "I'm calling 911. His fingers trembled, then released her wrist as he passed out. She stared at him for a second longer, adrenaline surging. The words rattled in her skull like marbles on glass. "Don't trust anyone, not even me." It wasn't until the ambulance arrived 10 minutes later, after a long wait full of suspicious looks from strangers and a paramedic who asked if she had anything to do with the man's condition, that she realized something strange. The moment she had told the dispatcher about the man's injuries, they hadn't asked for much detail. No questions. Just, "We'll be there shortly." And they had been. Too shortly. 2 men in plain clothes had arrived before the medics. Suits. Clean. Pressed. One of them even wore cufflinks. They didn't identify themselves. They barely looked at her. "Did he say anything?" the taller one asked sharply. "Excuse me?" Talia said, clutching her phone. "Before he passed out," the man continued, voice clipped, eyes narrow. "Did he say anything?" She shook her head, heart racing. "No, he just moaned a little." He stared at her a second longer, then nodded curtly and walked away as the paramedics took over. Talia stepped back and watched as the man was loaded into the ambulance. One of the paramedics glanced at her, then said quietly, "You should forget you ever saw this." She didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. Her tiny bedroom, lit only by a dim yellow bulb and cluttered with stacks of used textbooks and second-hand clothes, offered no comfort. She replayed everything, his whisper, the suits, the ambulance, that look in the paramedic's eyes. And his face. There was something familiar about it. She'd seen it before. Not in real life, but somewhere. She grabbed her old sputtering laptop and searched for the words she wasn't sure made sense. Missing Tech CEO South Bronx mugging. It took 3 scrolls and 1 outdated news article to find him. Nathaniel Quinn, founder of EtherCore, worth $900 million at his peak. Disappeared from the public eye 1 year ago after a major internal whistleblowing scandal rocked his company. He had been accused by his own board of tampering with security systems and leaking sensitive government contracts. But no charges had been filed, no body had been found. The media assumed he fled the country, but he hadn't. He'd been bleeding on a sidewalk, holding her wrist, whispering warnings, and he knew she'd find out who he was. The next morning, Talia showed up to school exhausted, her mind still spiraling. She barely noticed that someone had rifled through her locker. She did notice, however, that her social studies teacher, Mr. Kessler, had started watching her a little too closely. At Mel's diner that evening, she found a small package tucked under the counter where she usually kept her notepad. It was an old book. A dusty, faded copy of The Alchemist. No note, no name. Inside was a single piece of paper with a handwritten message. Trust is earned, not given. Flip to page 173. Her hands shook as she turned to the page. Nothing. But as she looked closer, she saw a small cut in the page's inner binding. She pulled at it gently, and out slid a tiny flash drive. Her breath caught. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. Just then, the bell above the diner door jingled. A man stepped in. Dark coat, sunglasses, cold eyes. He didn't order food. He looked straight at her. Talia snapped the book shut and shoved it into her backpack. "Gotta take a break," she muttered to her co-worker, and hurried to the back alley, the flash drive clutched tight in her palm. That night, after locking her bedroom door, she plugged the drive into her laptop. It took 10 minutes and a free decryption software she barely knew how to use. But when the files finally opened, she gasped. Thousands of documents, encrypted government emails, financial records, blueprints for a mass data collection network disguised as infrastructure upgrades, and a list of neighborhoods, including hers, targeted for quiet displacement through evictions, school closures, and police redistricting. Her block was highlighted in red, and at the bottom of the document, a note in plain text. "I couldn't stop them alone, but maybe you can finish what I started. NQ." Talia's eyes burned. Somewhere inside her chest, fear battled purpose. But beneath it all, something else was rising. Resolve. She looked out the window at the quiet street below, the same street she'd walked 1,000 times in silence. Not anymore. Now she had a voice. And even whispers, she was starting to believe, could echo like thunder. The sound of footsteps behind her was too soft to be casual. Talia paused outside her apartment building, her breath hitching as she glanced over her shoulder. The street was quiet, almost too quiet for a Friday night in the Bronx. No shouting from the bodega across the road, no kids chasing each other through the alley, just the rhythmic thud of her own heartbeat and a flickering street lamp buzzing above. She stepped forward. The footsteps resumed. She didn't look back this time. She just walked faster, gripping her backpack tighter. Inside was the flash drive, still warm from where her laptop had read its secrets just hours earlier. She climbed the stairs 2 at a time, keys already in hand, and barely got the door open before slamming it shut and locking every bolt. Her mom wasn't home. She was working a night shift at the hospital. Again. Talia had grown used to the silence, but tonight it made the air feel heavier. She crossed to the window, yanked down the blinds, and turned off every light in the apartment. Then she waited. Nothing. No knock. No sound. Just the quiet hum of the fridge and the memory of shoes following her through the dark. She collapsed onto the couch, still in her diner uniform, her knees pulled tight to her chest. Something was happening, something bigger than she could understand. And it all started with that man. Nathaniel Quinn. She whispered the name like a secret, half expecting it to summon someone from the shadows. Instead, it just echoed off the walls of her too-small living room. She needed answers. The next morning, she went straight to the library after school. Her laptop was old and slow, but the public computers ran smoother. She typed Nathaniel Quinn corruption into the search bar, and dozens of articles filled the screen. Most were dated from a year ago. Some labeled him a whistleblower. Others painted him as a paranoid recluse who tried to fake a scandal for publicity. But one blog post stood. "Last seen leaving school yesterday," the counselor said during an emergency homeroom meeting. "If anyone knows where he might be, please come forward." Talia's hands trembled under her desk. She remembered the last thing Malik had said to her. "Hey, you know that guy from the news, Nathaniel Quinn? Isn't that the dude you helped last week? You should look him up, for real. Some of this stuff's wild." That was 2 days ago. Now he was gone. And the look her teacher, Mr. Kessler, gave her as she stared blankly at the whiteboard that day made her skin crawl. Not the usual disinterest, not the usual condescension. This time it felt like a warning. By the time school let out, Talia was done pretending things were normal. She raced home, locked her door, and opened the flash drive again. There were more folders this time. She hadn't noticed them before, but somehow they were there now, as if activated by something she had done, or said. Or maybe they had always been hidden, waiting for her to look deeper. She clicked on a folder labeled Tier 2, Redacted Names. Inside were several PDFs and one audio file titled Playback 7. She hit play. Static filled her speakers, then a voice. Nathaniel's. "This is Quinn. If you're hearing this, it means you've taken the first steps. You've seen the data. You understand the threat. What you don't know yet is how deep it goes. People you trust aren't who they seem, even in your own school." Talia's blood froze. Nathaniel continued, "There are plants everywhere, informants, people who smile at you in the morning and report on you by lunch. You're not paranoid, you're just late to the truth." She sat in stunned silence as the file ended. The screen flickered, and then, just for a second, her webcam light turned on. No app was open, no browser requested access. Someone was watching. She yanked the laptop shut and threw it across the bed, breathing hard. The flash drive still glowed faintly in the port. Talia's body shook, not with fear this time, but with something sharper. Anger. Malik was missing. That man knew her name, and now even her teacher felt wrong. She stood up, went to the mirror, and stared at her reflection. Her eyes, once wide with confusion, now burned with something else. If Nathaniel Quinn wanted someone to finish what he started, he had found the right girl, even if she was alone, even if it meant danger, because Talia Monroe had nothing to lose, and she was done being afraid. The first time Talia held the book, it felt heavier than it should have. She sat on her bed, staring at the worn, leather-bound cover. There was no title, no author, just the initials NQ etched faintly into the bottom corner like a secret signature. Nathaniel had pressed it into her hands that day on the street as paramedics lifted him onto the stretcher. "A thank you," he'd murmured. But it wasn't just a book. Talia knew that now. The pages were filled with cryptic scribbles, diagrams, half-erased notes in the margins. It looked like a madman's journal, but she sensed a pattern. The way the ink bled, the symbols repeated, the underlined words. Echo, tear, blind spot. And then, as she flipped toward the middle, a soft metallic clink echoed out. She froze. Something was inside. Talia carefully peeled back the spine of the book, and there, nestled deep in the binding, was a tiny black flash drive, smaller than the one she'd seen earlier. No label, just a silver strip across the top. Her heart raced. Plugging it into her laptop felt like unlocking a door she could never close again. The screen flickered, then lit up with a folder titled Echo Root. Inside were 4 files. The first was a spreadsheet. She opened it slowly. Her breath caught. Names. Hundreds of names. Some she recognized, local politicians, corporate CEOs, 2 members of her city's housing authority. But it was the columns next to the names that made her skin crawl. Dates, bank transfers, codes labeled Eviction Zone 6, asset flip projects, displacement incentives, and in bold, South Bronx pilot, 12,430 residents pending relocation. She read the line 3 times before the words fully sank in. They were planning to push out over 12,000 people, people like her neighbors, her mom, kids at her school, and no one even knew. Until now, her hands trembled as she clicked the second file, a map. It was interactive, a satellite overlay of New York zoomed into the Bronx. Red zones blinked where development had already started. She clicked one. It pulled up property data, ownership records, even internal emails between government contractors. All fake fronts. All funded by a shell company linked back to EtherCore, Nathaniel's former tech empire. The third file was a video. She hesitated, then hit play. Nathaniel appeared on screen, seated at a desk, visibly thinner than she remembered. "If you're seeing this, then either I'm dead or I failed," he said. "This isn't just about me. It's about a system that profits from erasing people, quietly, efficiently, and without leaving fingerprints. I built something to stop them, a way to expose the truth. But I can't finish it alone. Someone innocent has to carry it the rest of the way." He looked into the camera, and for a second it felt like he was speaking straight to her. "Don't trust the ones closest to you, not even those who smile." The screen went black. The final file was encrypted. She clicked it, and a box popped up. "Password required." She stared at the screen. Then she remembered something. Back in the hospital, right after the whisper, he had squeezed her hand and muttered, "You remind me of her." Cam. Talia typed it in. The file opened instantly. Dozens of documents flooded the screen. Confidential reports, leaked memos, secret recordings. This was it. This was the core of it all. The ghost network he'd hinted at. But just as she scrolled through the third PDF, her screen froze. A second later, a new window popped up, a live chat box. "We see you, Talia." Her heart slammed against her ribs. She tried to close the window. Nothing happened. The cursor moved on its own. "You're not ready for this. Walk away." Then, the flash drive blinked once, twice, and the screen went black. "No, no, no," she whispered, yanking the drive out and slapping her laptop shut. Someone had hacked her system. Again, she jumped up, breathing hard, pacing the room. She needed help. Not from the police, not from school. She thought of Camilla. No, not yet. Then her mind drifted to someone else. Her Uncle Ray used to work in IT security. Maybe he could... Her phone buzzed. Blocked number. She let it go to voicemail. A second later, a text appeared. "You're making dangerous choices. Last warning." She deleted it without replying, but the fear lingered. And yet, buried under that fear was something fiercer. Rage. She changed clothes, grabbed her bag, and slipped out the window rather than the front door. She didn't notice the dark SUV parked across the street. Didn't see the man inside lower his binoculars. But across town, someone else had been watching. Mr. Kessler stood in his apartment, listening to the latest voice memo from a private line. "She found Echo Route," the voice said. Kessler's face tightened. He closed his phone, walked to his bookshelf, and opened a hidden compartment behind a row of teaching manuals. Inside, a badge, but not a school ID. It read, "Department of Internal Protection, Covert Division." Back in the Bronx, Talia was walking fast through dim streets when a figure stepped out from a side alley. She nearly screamed until she saw his face. Late 30s, broad shoulders, tactically calm. "You're Talia Monroe," he said. "Who are you?" "Name's Isaac. Isaac Brown. Nathaniel sent me." Talia took a cautious step back. "Prove it." Isaac reached into his coat slowly and handed her a worn photograph. It was Nathaniel, 10 years younger, standing beside Isaac in military fatigues, both smiling. Real, unguarded smiles. "He said you might not trust me," Isaac said, "but if you want to stay alive, you'll come with me right now." She stared at him, heart racing, mind spinning. Then, from behind her, tires screeched. A black van turned the corner fast. Isaac grabbed her wrist. Run! And for the second time in 2 weeks, Talia Monroe ran toward a truth that could get her killed. But this time, the cafeteria smelled like overcooked spaghetti and burned coffee, but it was the only place Talia felt even remotely safe after school. She sat tucked in a back corner with Isaac across from her, nursing a bruised wrist and sipping lukewarm tea like it might somehow warm the fear out of her bones. "Who's following me?" she asked, voice low. Isaac glanced around before leaning in. "They're not just following. They're probing, watching who you talk to, monitoring your routes. Probably already hacked your phone." Talia winced. "Then why did we even come here?" He shrugged. "Sometimes the safest place is where they least expect you to be." She looked up, still suspicious. "You said Nathaniel sent you. Why now? Why me?" Isaac hesitated, then pulled out a folded sheet of paper from his coat. It was a photo, taken from a security cam, time-stamped the night she found Nathaniel, her arm under his shoulders, trying to lift him. He said if anything ever happened, to find the girl in this photo, the one who didn't walk away. Talia blinked. "That's it? That's the whole reason?" Sometimes people reveal more about themselves in one choice than in a lifetime of speeches. That should have comforted her, but it didn't. Later that evening, against Isaac's advice, she walked alone to her school. She needed something, anything, to feel normal again. The halls were quiet, locker doors reflecting flickers of the emergency lights. She headed straight for the history wing, toward Mr. Kessler's classroom. He'd been her favorite teacher since sophomore year. Stern but fair, the kind of man who saw promise in kids even when they didn't see it in themselves. If anyone could help her think through this mess, it was him. The door was cracked open. "Kess?" she called softly, pushing it wider. He was inside, sitting at his desk. But he wasn't alone. Another man, tall and broad-shouldered, stood next to him, wearing a suit too polished for a school and a look too cold for comfort. They both turned. "Talia," Mr. Kessler said, smiling too quickly, "what are you doing here so late?" Her instincts screamed. Every muscle told her to back away, but she stayed. I just needed to talk about something." "You got a minute?" The man beside him glanced her up and down. "She knows." "Enough," Kessler said under his breath. He rose from his chair. "Why don't you come in and close the door, Talia?" She hesitated. "Talia," he repeated, softer. "It's okay." She stepped in, closed the door. That's when the man moved fast, faster than she expected, and blocked the exit behind her. "You've been accessing files," he said, stepping closer. "Uploading things that don't belong to you. You've gotten too curious." Mr. Kessler's smile dropped. "Why?" she whispered, eyes darting between them. Kessler's jaw tensed. "You don't understand what you've stepped into. This isn't some school project. These people, they clean up messes like you." He walked slowly around his desk, voice lower now, almost apologetic. "I tried to shield you, Talia. I really did. You were smart, talented, but you should have let this go." Talia clenched her fists. "Nathaniel trusted me." "He used you," Kessler snapped, "just like he used me. Thought he could burn it all down from the shadows." "Then why are you helping them?" He sighed. "Because idealism won't protect you when they come knocking." The suited man moved again, reaching inside his coat. Her breath hitched, but before he could draw whatever was inside, the lights cut out. A flash of movement. Glass shattered. And suddenly Isaac crashed through the window like a storm. He tackled the man in the suit, fists flying. Kessler shouted, ducking behind the desk. "Talia, go!" Isaac barked. She didn't wait. She sprinted out the door and down the hallway, heart hammering, mind spinning. Behind her, muffled punches, a gunshot, screams. She burst through the side exit and into the cold night, adrenaline blurring the edges of everything. Minutes later, Isaac stumbled out after her, limping but alive. "You good?" he asked, breath ragged. She nodded barely. "Your teacher. He's deeper than I thought. He's not just covering for them. He's embedded. They planted him in the school years ago. That whole career? A front." Talia shook her head. "Why would someone do all that? To find people like you, people they could silence early." They walked in silence until they reached Isaac's car, an old black Charger that looked like it belonged in a different era. As he pulled onto the main road, Talia looked over at him. "So what now?" "We move fast, we go deeper. There's a hidden server. Nathaniel called it the Ghost Network. It's where the real dirt is kept. You get that data out, you burn them down." Talia swallowed. "And if we don't?" "They erase you like you never existed." He reached into the glove box and handed her a small drive. "Encrypted access key. You're the only one who can open it now. Your fingerprints, your retina scan. Nathaniel made sure." She turned it over in her hands. It was smooth, black, almost weightless. But she could feel the weight anyway. "They won't stop," she said quietly. "No, but neither will we." Outside, the city roared, unknowing, uncaring. But in that moment, inside that car, something shifted. Talia wasn't just a girl with secrets anymore. She was the only one standing between truth and silence. The only light in the motel room came from the flickering neon sign outside the window. Talia sat on the bed with her knees drawn to her chest, the encrypted access key clutched in her hand. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her head throbbed, her ribs ached, but her focus had never been sharper. Isaac paced the room like a caged animal. "We can't wait any longer," he said. "If they realize you've got the access key, they'll lock down every node of the Ghost Network, or worse, shut it down completely." Talia looked up. Her voice soft but certain. "Then we go now." Isaac stopped, caught off guard by the steel in her tone. "You sure?" She nodded. "This doesn't end with us running. It ends with them exposed." Isaac pulled out a folded map of Washington, D.C., and laid it on the chipped coffee table. "Here," he pointed. "Federal Archives Annex. Looks like just another records building. But buried underneath is the server room Nathaniel built his network around. Government doesn't even know it's there." "And how do we get in?" Talia asked. Isaac smirked. "You're going in as a janitor." She blinked. "Come again?" "You're 17. You don't fit the profile of a threat. You go in with forged ID, cleaning gear, and just enough access to reach the lower levels. Once you're in, you use the key. And you? I'll be your distraction." She shook her head. "That's suicide." "It's a calculated risk. I've done worse." The next morning, under a gray DC sky, Talia changed into the uniform Isaac gave her. Gray polo shirt, black pants, a lanyard with a fake maintenance badge. Her curls were tucked into a cap, and a janitorial cart squeaked beside her as she approached the building. Inside, the receptionist barely glanced at her. "Morning," Talia smiled tightly. "Archives cleanup. I've got the lower level today. Have fun." She rolled the cart down the hallway, heart hammering louder than the wheels. She passed locked doors, empty cubicles, the smell of stale paper and bureaucracy in the air. Then came the elevator. She swiped the forged badge. It blinked red. Her stomach dropped. She tried again. Green. She exhaled and stepped in. The basement level felt like a tomb. Cold, quiet. Every footstep echoed. She followed Isaac's directions to a service tunnel that snaked behind storage rooms until she reached an old steel door with no markings. The keypad next to it hummed faintly. She plugged in the encrypted key. The door clicked. Inside was a cramped room filled with blinking servers, humming machines, and cables strung like spider webs. She found the main terminal and slid the access key into the port. A login prompt appeared. "Welcome back, Mr. Quinn," the screen read. Talia's fingers trembled as she entered the last command Nathaniel had given her. Upload all. The files surged into the system. Videos, documents, recordings, linking senators to backdoor deals, CEOs to eviction orders, judges to rigged trials. Then her earpiece crackled. "Talia, we've got a problem." Isaac's voice was strained. "I triggered a false alarm upstairs to buy you time, but someone recognized me. They've got me surrounded. You need to get out, now." "I'm not done yet." "Talia, no. You told me this only works if I finish it. I'm not leaving you behind, but I'm not stopping either." The upload bar hit 90%. Then the terminal froze. A soft beep echoed behind her. She turned. Mr. Kessler stood in the doorway, holding a gun. "Of course it was you," he said, stepping in. Nathaniel always had a thing for lost causes. Talia didn't flinch. "You won't stop this." He aimed the gun at the terminal. "I don't need to stop you. I just need to stop the upload." Before he could pull the trigger, a loud bang rang through the hallway. Kessler staggered backward, arm bleeding, dropping the gun. Isaac stood behind him, bloodied and limping, with a fire extinguisher in hand. "You talk too much," he said. Talia dove to the terminal and hit the override. The upload resumed. Seconds later, the bar hit 100%. All files transferred. The screen went black. Then a new message. Broadcast initiated. Across the country, phones buzzed, screens lit up. News outlets froze mid-broadcast as leaks flooded in. Politicians, lobbyists, corrupt officials exposed in real time. Talia turned to Isaac. "We did it," he smiled through bloodied lips. "No, you did." Sirens began wailing above them. Security was coming fast. "Time to disappear," Isaac said. They fled through the side tunnels, Kessler moaning behind them, the sound fading into the distance. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware. But not for long, because truth had just gone viral, and it came with names, dates, bank transfers, and signatures, and it all started with a whisper. By the time Talia and Isaac reached the getaway car, the first headlines had already started flashing on LED billboards across D.C. Billionaire whistleblowers' secret files rock nation. Teen girl behind leak? Who is she? Talia looked at the chaos blooming across the skyline and whispered to herself, "I was nobody yesterday." Then she tightened her grip on the key and added, "But not anymore." Talia crouched behind a stack of cleaning supplies in the darkened hallway of the Federal Archives Annex, her breath shallow and fast. The echo of boots stomped past the corridor, security guards sweeping every corner. Somewhere above her, Isaac was likely handcuffed, bruised, and probably buying her a few more minutes. She couldn't let that go to waste. She checked the flash drive in her pocket, the same one Nathaniel had handed her weeks ago, hidden inside an old novel. The upload had gone through, but if she didn't escape with evidence of how she got it, people would say it was fake. They'd discredit everything. She needed proof, not just headlines. "Come on, Talia," she whispered to herself. "Get it done. Get out." She reached the maintenance elevator. Her fake badge wouldn't work now, not with the building on lockdown, but she had studied the schematics with Isaac. She pried open the panel beside the door, exposing a tangle of wires and circuits. Her hands trembled, but her memory didn't fail. Red to green, blue to yellow, twist, tap, click. The elevator doors shuddered and slid open. Talia darted in, jabbing the button for the ground floor. The ride up felt like an eternity. As the doors opened, she didn't move. Standing just beyond them was a wheelchair, and in it sat Nathaniel Quinn. Her jaw dropped. "You're alive." He smiled, thin and exhausted. His once sharply trimmed beard was longer now, peppered with gray. The brilliant eyes she remembered were dimmer, but still held fire. "I told you not to trust anyone," he said, his voice low. "You faked your death?" "Not quite, but I let the world think I was dead. Easier to build in silence. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed someone pure, uninvolved, someone they wouldn't suspect." Talia clenched her jaw. "You used me. I empowered you." She stepped out of the elevator, eyes narrowing. "You could have told me everything from the beginning. And you would have run just like I did once." He gestured to a hallway. "Come, you need to see the rest." They moved quickly through a dim corridor. No guards, no alarms here. Inside a hidden chamber lined with servers and antique books, Talia saw the full scope of Nathaniel's operation. Dozens of screens lit up with data feeds, messages pouring in from journalists, lawyers, even foreign governments. "You exposed more than I ever could," he said. "They'd written me off. But you're a story they can't ignore." Talia stepped forward, reading a scrolling headline. "Leak tied to teen in South Bronx. Whistleblower's identity remains unclear." She turned to him. "You want me to be the face of this?" "I want you to own it, if you choose to." A long silence stretched between them. "You should have asked?" "You're right," Nathaniel said quietly, "and I'm sorry." Behind them, a screen blinked red. An incoming message. Talia glanced over. Encrypted footage of Isaac, bound in a Homeland Security van, being moved across state lines. "They're trying to make him disappear," Nathaniel said. "We're not letting that happen," she replied. Nathaniel looked at her, eyes steady. "Then we move now." Talia walked to the console and entered a new command. She initiated a second upload, this time of the live tracking information, security logs, and their evidence of Isaac's illegal detention. In seconds, the signal was bouncing between 3 continents. "We just went global," she said. Nathaniel smiled. "Now they can't shut you up." "Or him." "Then what happens next?" "That's up to you." As sirens began to swell in the distance again, Nathaniel wheeled himself to a hidden elevator. "I disappear. For real this time. They'll come for me, but not before you finish what we started. You really trust me with that?" He paused. "No. I trust that you don't need anyone's permission anymore." She didn't say anything, just watched him vanish down the lift. Outside, the city was waking up to a nightmare, at least for the ones who had thrived on secrecy and greed. Talia pulled her hoodie over her head, stepped into the sunlight, and melted into the crowd. No longer invisible, not anymore. The courtroom was packed to the rafters. Reporters leaned forward from the press box. College students huddled along the back wall, whispering. Cameras rolled quietly, tracking every flinch, every twitch. And at the center of it all, seated tall despite the nerves fluttering in her stomach, was Talia Monroe, the girl from the diner, the nobody from South Bronx. Now, she was the girl who brought down giants. Her name had gone viral 3 days ago after a leak traced the source of the exposed ghost network directly back to her. Overnight, she became a national symbol. Half hailed her as a hero, the other half questioned if she'd even understood what she was doing. But none of that mattered now, not to her. The moment the bailiff called her name and she stood to walk toward the witness stand, a hush fell over the room. Her steps were slow, steady, confident. She had practiced her breathing, rehearsed her words, but nothing could have prepared her for what she saw next. "Mr. Kessler," Her former teacher, sitting at the defense table, pale, shaking, his eyes locked on her with a quiet, seething disbelief. She hadn't known he'd be there. She thought his role had been minor, just a small pawn in a bigger scheme. But the prosecution's list had dropped that morning, and there he was, one of the key figures in the federal racketeering charges. He wasn't just a pawn. He'd been writing the playbook. She sat on the stand, swore in, and stared straight ahead as the lead prosecutor approached. "Miss Monroe," the woman began, "can you please describe how you first came into contact with the information you eventually released?" Talia nodded. "I found a flash drive hidden in a book that Mr. Quinn gave me. It held encrypted data, and when I looked deeper, I saw files, blueprints, payment trails, everything connecting multiple officials to a housing displacement scheme." "And what did you do next?" "I tried to tell someone. At first, my teacher, Mr. Kessler." At that name, several jurors shifted in their seats. "And what happened when you spoke to Mr. Kessler?" "He told me I was imagining things, that I didn't understand what I'd found. Later that night, someone followed me home. My friend at school disappeared. I knew something wasn't right." "Did you trust Mr. Kessler after that?" Talia's voice dropped. "I wanted to, but I knew I couldn't." Across the room, Mr. Kessler was sweating now. His lawyer whispered something. He ignored it. The prosecutor continued. "And can you explain how your name became tied to the Ghost Network?" Talia leaned into the mic. "I was the only one left who hadn't been bought off, scared off, or silenced. Nathaniel needed someone nobody would expect. Someone with nothing to lose." A beat passed. "Turns out," she said quietly, "I had everything to lose." There was silence. Then the defense attorney stood. "Miss Monroe, you're 17 years old, 18 now, and you're claiming to have dismantled a network of elite power brokers with a flash drive and a laptop." "That's correct. You expect this court to believe that you, an underage waitress from the Bronx, somehow cracked encrypted files, evaded federal surveillance, and coordinated with a known fugitive?" "I didn't coordinate," she said, calm. "I followed the truth." "Isn't it possible you were manipulated, used, taken advantage of?" Talia's eyes locked onto Kessler. "I was manipulated," she said, "by people I trusted. My teacher, the system. But I was never confused about what I saw. I didn't need someone to use me to know right from wrong." The lawyer opened his mouth, then shut it. The judge looked toward the defense table. "Do you have any further questions?" Mr. Kessler stood suddenly, startling the room. "Your Honor," he said, voice shaking, "may I address the witness?" The judge paused, then nodded once. "Proceed, cautiously." Kessler turned to Talia. His voice dropped. "You think you're a hero?" "No," Talia replied, "but I'm not the coward who betrayed his students." Kessler clenched his jaw. "You don't know the full picture." "I know enough," she shot back. "You sold out kids who trusted you. You watched them lose their homes and dreams while you cashed checks. You don't understand how the world works." "Maybe not," she said, "but I know what justice feels like, and it's happening right now." Kessler went quiet, then he slumped down slowly into his seat, as if something inside him had broken for good. Outside, a wave of protesters chanted Talia's name. Inside, the judge called for a brief recess. As she stepped down from the stand, the prosecutor whispered, "You just cracked the case." Talia nodded, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on a monitor where Nathaniel Quinn was watching via live feed. He smiled just a little and nodded. For the first time, Talia smiled too. Not for the cameras, not for the headlines, but for herself. Because this time, the girl no one noticed had finally been heard. The applause echoed through the auditorium like a wave breaking against the shore. Talia Monroe stood on stage at Booker T High School, the same school where she'd once sat in the back row, invisible, working double shifts just to afford lunch. Now she wore a navy blue blazer with a university pin on the lapel, her hair in a neat bun, her eyes focused, calm, and full of purpose. Behind her was a banner: Truth, Courage, Change. And in front of her, rows of teenagers, some in hoodies and braids, others in sneakers and school uniforms. They were silent, hanging on every word. "You don't need power to speak the truth," she said into the mic. "You just need the courage to do it anyway." The students erupted in cheers. A few teachers clapped harder than the kids. From the back row, a young girl raised her hand. "Miss Monroe," she asked shyly, "weren't you scared?" Talia smiled gently. "Every minute." The girl tilted her head. "Then how did you keep going?" Talia leaned forward. "Because when the world tries to silence you, your whisper is louder than you think." That silence again. But this time it wasn't fear. It was fire. Talia saw it in their eyes, the same fire she once buried under doubt and paycheck stubs. Outside the school, reporters waited by vans. They didn't chase her anymore. They asked permission. Because now she wasn't just a headline. She was a movement. Back in D.C., the fallout had only just begun. Over a dozen officials had been indicted. Several more had resigned. Nathaniel Quinn's testimony, along with the Ghost Network data, exposed a housing scheme worth over $1.7 billion, redirected through fake non-profits to displace low-income families across 6 states. One of those fake non-profits had been run by Talia's old principal. Mr. Kessler took a plea deal. 20 years was without parole. She hadn't celebrated when she heard. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about repair. And that repair had already started. A few weeks later, Talia stood outside a red brick community center in the Bronx. A new banner hung over the doorway. The Brown Initiative. Below it, Isaac Brown stood grinning in a denim jacket, free at last. "This was your idea," he told her. "No," she replied. "This was all of us." Inside, teens were building laptops from scratch, learning coding, getting financial literacy lessons. The very tools that had once saved Talia's life were now being passed on. That night, after the last group left, she sat on a bench outside, her breath fogging in the spring air. She opened a small envelope from her scholarship foundation. It was a note from Nathaniel. "I chose you because you had nothing to prove. You helped me because you had everything to give. Don't ever let the world tell you your voice is small." She closed the letter slowly, holding it against her chest. From the sidewalk, a little girl no older than 10 wandered up, staring at her in awe. "Are you really the girl from the court?" the child asked. Talia looked down at her. "I guess I am." "Were you scared?" "All the time." "So, how did you win?" Talia paused, her voice soft but steady. "Because I stopped waiting to be noticed, and I started acting like my voice mattered." The girl blinked, then smiled, and walked back toward her mother, who was watching nearby. Talia sat there a moment longer, the city humming around her, alive with new possibility. Because in the end, it wasn't just about one girl from the Bronx. It was about all the kids no one saw, all the whispers that went unheard, until someone finally listened. And if you're listening, if this story moved you, made you think, made you feel, then don't let it stop here. Share it, speak it, stand with it, because even whispers can change the world. If you believe stories like Talia's deserve to be told, subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, and join us in bringing more truth to light. Your voice matters more than you know.